Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Lyoko Retrospectives. Today we're going to be looking at episode 29 of Code Lyoko, Exploration. This episode pretty much follows up on what happened at the end of the last episode. In this case, the group is getting ready to explore the sector Carthadge. And pretty much, put simply, this episode is pretty much just exposition and showing off what Carthage, just kind of showing off more of Carthage. Just kind of the ins and outs of it. As in the beginning of the episode, the group decides that, for example, whenever the group for example, the only way to enter Carthage in this case is by using the Scipio code. How it works that you have to go to the very edge of whatever sector you're traveling in, and ultimately, and then Jeremy has to enter Scipio. Sorry, I don't know my pronunciations. And a pod with Xana's symbol on it will come, scoop you up, and put you in. Bring you to the center of, bring you to the center of the sector that they call the arena. After that, you have 3 minutes to explore as much of it as you can, and in those 3 minutes, you need to find a switch, a switch that looks like Xana's symbol. Activate it, and if you manage to activate it in time, then you'll be able to explore Scipio to your heart's content. If you don't, then you'll be able to explore Carthage to your heart's content. If not, then Carthage will rearrange itself and you have to find another way around. As such, in this case, what happens is that the first people that go in are Aelita, Ulrich, and Odd. Yumi stays behind as she's kind of having some problems, as she's having some trouble with her parents, since because of her Lyoko duties, she's coming home later than she should be, and her parents are getting worried about her. And as such, they go to explore Carthage, and they're just pretty much trying to find any way they can. And they're pretty much just trying to find as much as they can about it. And part of the reason they're exploring it is because they think there might be something that could help them out in what they're doing. Finding an antivirus for what Xana infected Aelita with, possibly finding something that can take him down, etc. However, once they're in Carthage, they're attacked by more of the creepers from the last episode. And unfortunately, in the midst of everything, Ulrich and Odd get devirtualized. However, unlike the other times they're usually devirtualized, they don't pop back up in the scanner room. It turns out that it's because Carthage operates a bit differently than the other sectors, which means that in order if you want to get someone out of there, you need the proper code. As a result, unfortunately, when this happens, they didn't manage to hit the switch in time, and as a result, Aelita gets trapped, and unfortunately, that's when the octopus monster starts going after her. And the episode does officially give it a name. They call it a schizozoa, or a schizozoid. I think it's called schizozoa. Either way, that's the official name for it. As such, with her alone, it closes in on her, and so Jeremy, running out of options, calls in Yumi, and so she sneaks out of her house and goes to the factory traveling to Carthage and ultimately deactivating the switch, which in turn rearranges Carthage again, cuts Aelita off from the Schizozoa, and ultimately allows the two to meet up via elevator. As they continue exploring, they manage to get to the edge of Carthage, because pretty much Carthage is like one giant dome, and outside of it is like data and so forth. And once they reach the edge of it, they happen to find an interface for Carthage. And it's here that we get actually one really big secret. One very important thing about Carthage. It turns out Carthage is where Xana specifically lives in Lyoko. While they kind of have shown that Xana has some degree of control of Lyoko, and to a degree you could say that Xana's everywhere in Lyoko, I think the idea is here that Carthage is where Xana's source code is. As when Aelita goes to the interface, she finds his code, and through that, she realizes that this is exact, and yeah, that's exact. So yeah, technically, Carthage is where Xana lives. This is where he resides. So which kind of explains why Carthage is harder to access than the others. However, it's through the interface, Aelita is able to find the code for devirtualization. But Xana, being Xana, knows that ultimately unleashes more monsters on her and Yumi to try and take care of them. But unfortunately, which ultimately brings us to a new monster variety. These, I want to say, whale creatures or something. They look like a mix between a killer whale between a killer whale and and manta rays. But bottom line, they can fly around, and so once Xana summons them, Aelita manages to send the devirtualization code to Jeremy, and so he sends them one of the vehicles, the hover scooter or whatever, and they manage to get away. Though Yumi gets blasted off. However, Aelita is able to escape through one of these tunnels that connect to the arena of Carthadge, and through that she's able to pop back out of a tower in the mountain sector and go to a neutral tower so she can get devirtualized. As such, Jeremy enters the code to bring back everyone, and they ultimately institute a return to the past because Yumi's parents went to the principal and Jim, and well, they can't have him discovering the supercomputer, so yeah. Yeah, again, like I said, this episode is mostly just kind of an exposition episode. It expands on what we learned in the last episode, namely allowing the group to explore Carthadge more. And really, the episode's main purpose is just to give us more details about Carthadge and how it works. And again, it's through this is this episode helps exemplify why Carthadge is probably my favorite sector in Lyoko, because it's so different and operates on its own set of rules. It doesn't have a consistent landscape. It changes because it's like one giant maze or labyrinth. It's always different, always changing. And if you don't want, and when you go, and on top of that, there's just so many new things like that. Like when Yumi goes into Carthadge, she ends up finding what they call an elevator, which is like this fast running thing that runs around the inside of Carthadge that she managed to jump on. It keeps changing tracks, going all over the place. It's really nice and interesting to watch. On top of that, because everything is shifting and changing, you never know what you're going to expect when you go into Carthadge. Like when Aelita, Odd, and Ulrich enter Carthadge, they go through a labyrinth and just go through different tunnels. When Yumi goes into Carthadge later, she finds herself in a long hallway with a laser grid. It's just interesting, and you don't know what to expect when you go there. So it's actually really nice that we get to see more of it in the whole episode, and seeing the whole episode actually kind of go into it. Go into it more. And on top of that, you do realize that how different this place is from the rest of Lyoko, kind of from the get-go. Not just in how you can't just virtualize into the place. It also helps that if you're shy, that you can't devirtualize from it either unless you have the proper code. And unfortunately, which is something they learned the hard way when Ulrich and Odd get devirtualized. But again, it also is interesting that you finally learn that Carthadge is where is the sector of Lyoko that Xana calls home. And honestly, I buy it because as we know, Xana is a supercomputer, is a super AI. It would make sense why he would probably why his source code would most likely be in the place that's pretty much like a literal version of cyberspace. There's data all around a dome. Everything looks so technological. Nothing looks like it's natural. The other four sectors, at least, are based on, like I said, real world locations. Carthadge is just like the inside of a computer. It's cool. So it makes sense why Xana would be located there. So I like that sort of thing. And again, pretty much the whole episode is just sort of explaining. It's just mostly just exposition and showing how Carthadge works in relation to the rest of Lyoko. On top of that, we once more get the name. We do actually have the official name for the tentacle monster, which I said, Scythozoa. But we also get introduced to a new set of monsters. These ones also being unique and also being nice and varied. I forget what they're called. I think they may be called whales or rays or something. I don't know. They'll probably say the name later on, but for now this is just their introduction, and they're just there to give Aelita and Yumi a hard time. So yeah. I don't really have much else to say about it. There is like I said, there was a B plot involving Yumi and her parents, since her parents are worried about her since she's staying out so late. But honestly, that really doesn't play that much into it. That really doesn't play much into the plot aside from having Yumi having to sneak out. And because of the return to the past function, it's just pretty much any consequence that Yumi has from sneaking out are completely undone. As when they do the return to the past function, it restarts back to the beginning of that school day. So it does, and Yumi ends up deflating all her parents' fears by saying that she's in love with someone. Which, personally, if I were her dad, I'd be like, who is he? But whatever, her parents are more trusting of her. Since despite everything, she does still act like a good kid. But, yeah. On the whole, though, it's not a bad episode at all, but it's really just a exposition episode. I wouldn't say, it's not filler because we do get more plot developments, plot development, but it really is interesting to see how more of Carthage and seeing how it works and and its relation to the rest of Lyoko. And yeah, on top, oh yeah, one more minor thing, we learned that they can actually activate the return to the past function whenever they want, not just when they deactivate a tower. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I have to say. Not a bad episode, just mostly exposition. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.